Hey, how's it going, YouTube? Sam here. I'm on day 74 of my solid food vacation cold press juice feast. Out here is the same same place I recorded on Monday 4 or 5 days ago. And I came back out here. I tried a couple other places, but wasn't able to capture as sunny day and quite as peaceful a location, so I'm back here. Just wanted to update you on my weight and where I'm at. I am at, I've been holding steady at about 130 to 133 pounds for the last month or so of the juice feast. When I first started, I was at about 148, upper 140s, 147, 148 pounds. I lost a quick 5 pounds in my first 5 days or week or so of the juice feast, and then another 5 pounds in the couple weeks after that. I think folks that start this juice feast, you'll find that you'll lose weight quickly, rapidly, especially if you have weight to lose. I think that first 5 pounds I lost in those first few days was that kind of undigested or unprocessed food that had been sitting in my digestive system. And I think I wasn't necessarily overweight, but it was sort of the end of winter, so I was at the upper limits of the window of weight that I'm normally at, upper 140s. Quickly went down to lower 140s and then into the 130s, which is, I haven't really been in since high school. 130 to 133. I've been holding steady there for the last month, and I don't expect to go too much under that, but I did weigh in this morning and I was actually at 129 pounds flat, so maybe I will creep down there a little bit, but I don't expect to creep down there too much. For those curious, I'm about 5'10" tall. If you're curious about sort of my weight distribution and how that sort of relates to you. One thing I've been trying recently in the last few days is juicing beets. I hadn't been doing that until these last couple days. Beets I found to be quite laxative. They go right through you, and I've noticed that they turn your waste matter and even your urine a little bit, but at least in my case, they turn my waste matter to be quite purple or pink. And because they're quite laxative, when I first had the beet juice on this juice feast, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, I decided to kind of make it like a little bit of a test to see how quickly they would go through my system. I drank the 16 ounces or so of beet juice. It was not pure beet juice, but it was mainly beets or high amount of beets, and it went through my system, the 16 ounces. Keep in mind that a stomach typically holds about 8 to 10 ounces of juice at one time. The 16 ounces went right through in about 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is pretty good. I don't know if that's exactly parallel to what one finds with the prune test, but I found, if it is, then, for being 3/4 or so of the way through this juice feast, it's good to have that beet juice go through me in about 2 hours, or maybe a little bit more. So that was encouraging. I hadn't incorporated beets yet, but I wanted to because, one yardstick I go by is I try to eat the rainbow, as they say, or in this case, drink the rainbow, which means to make sure I'm getting a variety of different produce, fruits, and vegetables, and using color as a way to gauge that. It's said that humans, being, in my opinion, frugivores, and of course our digestive systems are most similar to those of gorillas and apes and other frugivores, herbivores, because they're very long, whereas carnivores like cats have a very short digestive system. Another thing that differentiates us from carnivores, like cats, they evolve to see movement. That's why cats go crazy over like a piece of yarn that you dangle in front of them, or because it's kind of triggering their movement mechanism, which is how they kill rodents to eat. Whereas humans, we evolved to see color. And one of the reasons to do that is because, we evolved eating fruits off trees and vegetables, and the more color those fruits and vegetables had, those are nutrients that you're seeing in that produce. So I wanted to make sure on this juice feast I was getting as much variety of nutrients as possible. I had been neglecting beets, even though I realized that they're a very powerful ingredient in your juices, because I think when I first started juicing beets, when I first did this about a year ago, I didn't really like them. Not a big fan of the texture of beets. The taste is a little strong, but I think that in reality I hadn't yet found the right recipe of beets. I really like this recipe I've found. It's pretty basic. It's about 3 pounds of apples, 2.5 pounds of carrots, maybe 2 bunches of beets, about 6 beets or so, and then about half a lemon and a thumb of ginger. Makes a very kind of purplish yet smooth beet juice. Very deep purple, yet also quite smooth and palatable. So I think I'll incorporate that into my juicing from here on out, because I found it kind of goes right through me. And I had a very, very big movement this morning. Big solid movement. My movements are still coming regularly, usually a big solid one in the morning. I have been taking photos of all of them, and at some point I'm going to upload those, or at least the biggest one, so folks can see for proof that I'm still passing, and one will still pass substantial solid matter into the juice feast, so you can really see, how much old matter is in our food tube, in our digestive system, and then how also the juice feast enables us to clean that out and clean out the gunk in our cells while we replace that with the activated water and nutrients found in the juices. In my last video I asked folks to guess my age. In this one I've got a little bit of stubble, and I think I'm giving away my age a little more because you can see that I've got some white in my beard and a bit in my hair. So, you might maybe guess my age a little bit more clearly in this video because of the stubble. If you can see it, I'm not sure if you can see it with the light, but there's a good video by David Reinashek, who is a juice coach. According to him, he coined the term juice feast. His videos are pretty interesting. He did a good one about the conception of time as one experiences it in the juice feast. And I've talked a little bit about time in the last juice feast, and how time for me is moving very quickly because, I'm not struggling through this juice feast. I'm not cleaning myself out or losing weight by means of deprivation or caloric restriction. I'm not doing that. On the juice feast, you get as many calories as you need, so you're not hungry all the time, you're not hangry, you're sleeping well. And because you're satisfied, the time at least seems to move quite quickly, and it does. And David Reinashek, in his video, he talks about how time, in some ways it moves quite quickly, and in some ways it moves quite slowly, and it can move quickly or swiftly like a cloud, in that you're light, and you, at least that's how I interpret it, time moves swiftly because you're not struggling, and that is the case for me. He also compares time to a bulldozer, which kind of plows steadily and assuredly, and your body, time really heals your body through the juice feast, moving steadily, assuredly, and slowly. Well, more assuredly than slowly, but the changes that you experience in your body are momentous, and that happens by allowing the time day at a time to move through your body and allowing the time with the juices to cleanse out your system. He has a really good analogy for the juice fast in his video, where he says it's a lot like the movie Groundhog Day, in that you get, rather than going through an X number of days, you get very good at doing the same juicing day over and over again. And that's definitely true. You know, taking it one day at a time is very important. For me, and I think for a lot of people, you wake up in the morning and you go right to the kitchen and you make your juices for the day. And for me, it takes about an hour and a half, which isn't too bad, because I get all my food and nutrient preparation out of the way in the hour and a half for the day. But the days certainly blur together, and it seems like I'm sometimes, in a lot of ways, having each day, the same day, occur back to back to back, which is fine. You know, for one thing, I think being in the quarantine lockdown really amplifies that or underscores that. But at least the way I saw it, if I'm going to be in a lockdown and the days are going to blur together anyway, I might as well be doing something quite useful. And the juice feast was it for me. So you get really good at juicing and really good at taking it one day at a time and doing the same day over and over again on the juice feast. And he also compares time in the juice feast being like a snail, in that it can seem quite slow at times. And certainly when you look at the big picture, and I'm guilty of that in this juice feast too, I'm constantly looking at the calendar and marking days off the calendar and thinking, okay, I've only got this many more days to go. I've done this many days. In this amount of days, I'll be this far. And when you do that, it can seem quite daunting. And that's really a psychological trick you're playing on yourself, because the days are going to move by. You know, time is going to move by at the same rate, whether you do the juice feast or whether you don't. So it's really no different. But one thing about the juice feast that's definitely true, and I've, noticed this and seen it, is that, and it's very unique, the juice feast is very unique in this way from other diets, but that your body changes a lot more quickly than your psychology in the juice feast, which is different than other diets, maybe vegan diets, or where you're making slow incremental changes and your body kind of changes, and sometimes, but it's maybe not so rapid. With the juice feast, your body changes rapidly. You lose weight rapidly. Healing happens more rapidly than you'll ever experience in your life. And a lot of times your psychology doesn't keep up. You know, one thing that Neil Barnard, who is a doctor, a very famous vegan doctor, he works with the Doctors for Responsible Medicine, I think it's called, or Physicians for Responsible Medicine. It's plant-based physician advocates, and they're responsible here in Washington, D.C. for getting us away from the ridiculous food pyramid, which showed us having to eat mostly carbohydrates in the day. He advocated during the last presidential administration to have that changed to the, I suppose, more responsible or more reasonable food plate instead of the food pyramid. But one thing that Dr. Barnard says is that, and I think John Rose has echoed this too, is that it takes about 21 days. I think this is what Dr. Barnard said, and John Rose, I think he said 28 days, but it's somewhere around there, and that after 21 days, 28 days, your taste buds will change to where you're starting to like and appreciate and crave the foods that you've been eating. And I think on a juice feast, that's rapid, even more so than just a normal vegan diet. And in the case that Dr. Barnard would say, on a juice feast, you're developing tastes for the fruits, vegetables, and produce very rapidly. And for one thing, your body on the juice feast, and people say this all the time, your body begins to demand the nutrition it's getting. If you go a day or two without getting that level of nutrition, your body will start to remind you, and you'll start to crave it more so than just it tasting good, which it will, but that your body's like, look, I really need this. And if it doesn't get it, it feels bad and sick. And I think on a juice feast rather than just a vegan diet, that process goes even quicker. So in the juice feast, your taste buds will rapidly change, and those physical changes happen a lot quicker than your psychology can really account for and catch up. And this actually happened to me in my first rounds of juice feasting last summer, when I was going like 4 or 5 days at a time most weeks, and then coming off of it on the weekends, with some fruit and then some juices and fruit in the day, and then maybe some cooked food, vegan food in the evening, sometimes not vegan food. But what I found, because at that point too, I was a big espresso drinker. I mean, that was my vice. I would wake up and have a shot in the morning. Well, it used to be 2 shots in the morning, and then like 1 late morning, 1 early afternoon, maybe a shot late afternoon. I was having 4, 5, 6 shots of espresso a day, and I think espresso actually doesn't have as much caffeine as people normally think, but still, that was pushing the upper limit of what an adult should have for caffeine a day, maybe between 250 and like 400 milligrams of caffeine a day. And one of the things I noticed almost immediately was that because on my juice feast, I was kind of not having caffeine, but then I wanted to go back on the coffee or the espresso, because I just, wanted to have that drug, that caffeine dopamine hit that I was used to. So I think my first day or 2 of the juice feast, I didn't do espresso, and then I said, screw it, I'll go back, I'll have some espresso. But when I did, it was too bitter for me, like much too bitter. I would have a couple sips and I wouldn't even finish the cup, which was like very unlike me. But what I did, because I wasn't ready to give up the espresso then psychologically, because it was like my drug, it was my crutch to get through the day, it was what I drank when I was practicing piano, it was part of my morning routine, and what I would do when I wanted a break at the office, I wasn't ready to give it up, so I weaned myself back on to espresso. I mean, it was bitter, but it's such a small amount that I was able to just have it anyway, and eventually I got used to the taste of it again, even though in a matter of a few days I had lost the taste for it. So that was an example of how your body changes more quickly than your psychology, in that I think on the juice feast, if people try to go back to those old foods, their body reminds them, and it'll demand the nutrition, it'll demand the nutrition that it had been receiving so quickly and efficiently in the juice feast, and it will crave the fruits and vegetables that you had been enjoying. And that definitely has been what I've seen when I was juice feasting before, is that I was just eating a lot more fruits and vegetables and craving them a lot more. I mean, that's all very good. Those are good things, but you just know that sometimes psychologically we're not ready to give up these things that we've grown up with, that have become comfort foods, things a part of our routine. So in a lot of ways, time moves slowly for someone psychologically, in that you're looking at the calendar and your body's giving up the food vices a lot more quickly than maybe you're ready to yourself. And for that reason, I say that, I love my raw vegan foods, my fruits and vegetables, my juices. And for me to just say I'm 100% raw vegan after this, well, that's the goal, but the world isn't built for raw vegans, I wasn't raised on raw vegan food, and that's why I'm doing what I can to eject my body of that buildup of processed gunk food, and in my food tube, in my digestive system, and even in my cells. But after this, if I was to say, I won't be raw vegan at all, or I will be 100% raw vegan, I won't be eating cooked foods or processed foods at all, well, I mean, the society isn't built for people like us, so there's a good chance that I'll slip up here and, now and then, because, I want to partake in what everyone else is doing, and because I'm not psychologically comfortable to just give up those vices as quickly as I think my body is really giving them up. So just pointing that out, lest I be called a hypocrite for having the occasional, cooked food or processed food. I mean, that's definitely not the goal, and hopefully someday my body and psychology will get to the point where I just don't want that food at all. And I think I'm getting to that point, because I really can't imagine eating that food in the daytime. I think it would just make me feel way too weighed down, way too heavy and dehydrated. But I think partaking every so often isn't something I'm going to beat myself up for. And I've seen some people on YouTube beating themselves up for slip-ups. I know Nick, the Raw Rebellion channel, I think now he's called Vegan Equilibrium, or he's a great YouTuber. He's interesting guy, smart guy, great guy. Did a 90-day juice feast, but I see him beating himself up over eating some starches now and then, and I think that's unnecessary, and I'm not gonna do that to myself. But because the world isn't built for people like us, but also knowing that raw vegan is the goal, and I think someday I'm getting there, at least physically and psychologically. Another benefit of the juice feast that I think people know about, but it's worth highlighting, especially now because it's high noon in the middle of summer and I'm out here with my shirt off, is that you get so well hydrated on the juice feast that you don't get sunburned. You become so well hydrated that your body becomes practically resistant to sunburn, and you can be outside for prolonged periods of time without sunscreen. The human body is supposed to be approaching 70% water. I think most of us are closer to like 40 or 50%, and I think I was probably closer to that 40 or 50%, marker before doing the juice feast. I don't have, unfortunately, a scale that allows me to weigh myself, or allows me to weigh my water content, but I think I'm probably approaching now that 70% or at least 60%, which is quite good. The first source, or the first person from whom I learned that being so well hydrated is a good protection from sunburn was actually Tom Brady, the football player, in his book, The TB12 Method, I think it's called. I got that book a couple years ago because, Tom Brady, who's the best football player today, he had a unconventional or an unorthodox nutrition and training regime, and I wanted to learn more about it because he's obviously the best football player, and he's like 42, 43, still going. He never gets hurt in a sport where the injury rate is through the roof, and I wanted to learn about what he was doing. And at this point this must have been 3 years ago, I was already on board with the vegan bandwagon, the vegan movement, but I wanted to see what else Tom Brady was doing. And he talks about how staying well hydrated kept him from getting sunburned in his summer training camps. I think he, in his book or on his website, he sells these like dissolving hydration tablets. I used to take those. Obviously, I'm not taking them now. Drinking the juices through the plants and vegetables, or through the fruits and vegetables, is the best way you can stay hydrated, because some people on the juice fast, they ask, how much water should I drink? And the reality is you're drinking a gallon and a half of water, full stop. You don't need to drink any other water, because you're getting the best kind of activated water you can. That's basically sunlight energy filtered through plants in the form of water in the juices. So that stuff is that water is being basically filtered through plants and going directly into your bloodstream when you drink it. It takes out the waste matter in your cells, and that's why it replaces it with juices and that activated water, and of course that's why the water content of your body is going up. And of course, I continue to lose waste matter and fat is coming off my body, but my weight is stabilizing, or at least it has for the last month, between 130 and 133 pounds. So, I do know that the water content of my body is going up, which is encouraging. And that also protects me from illness. We're living in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic right now, and humanity has become so sick that we can't even be near each other, which is pretty sad if you think about it. Whether or not you believe about the germ theory of illness transmission, we are a sick species right now, and the number one way to fix that is to go on a juice feast, because, as I've said again and again, it cleans the gunk out of your food tube, out of your small intestines and colon, and it cleans the crap out of your cells too. As Dr. Hiromi Shinya noted, Dr. Hiromi Shinya was the inventor of the colonoscopy. He noted that all disease begins in the gut, and cleaning out that is a great way to disease-proof yourself. Tom Brady's book also talks about the importance of an alkaline body composition and an alkaline diet versus an acidic diet. Tom Brady's book about nutrition and training also talks about eating raw foods, and he says that you should have about 80% alkaline versus 20% acidic diet, and alkaline foods are your raw fruits and vegetables, whereas acidic foods are your animal products, your meats, oils. I think pastas, also cooked plants and vegetables, and I guess fruits probably fall somewhere along the middle of that spectrum. And I will post a link in the comments about where one can find a list of alkaline versus acidic foods. But Tom Brady's book talks about the importance of having an alkaline diet so that you can recover from inflammation, from injury quicker, and of course, protect yourself and your health. And Tom Brady doesn't mention what percentage of fruits and vegetables that he eats are raw, but I imagine they're quite a high percentage. John Rose, Tom Brady says 80% alkaline versus 20% acidic, so John Rose, I think, is someone that would say 100% alkaline is the big way to go. But the best way to become more alkaline in your body composition is to, of course, go on the juice feast and to get that gunk out of your small intestine and colon. And there's a movie that I think depicts this this idea or this concept very well, and it's actually a kid's movie, although I think there's some sophisticated messages. It's from a decade or two ago, and it's called Osmosis Jones. It's a mostly animated movie. It stars Chris Rock and Bill Murray, and there's a very good scene about Osmosis Jones is a white blood cell that's a policeman in the body and going after the virus, which is the villain. There's the mayor of the body who lives in the brain, and he's kind of corrupt, and the body's become sick because of that. And there is a new cell who's running for mayor of the body, and his name is like Joe Colonic or something like that.
Mr. Mayor,
Not now, Leah. I have a body to run.
I've got Tom Clonic's new campaign ad.
Oh, let's go. Put it on.
The following is a paid political announcement.
The bowels. It didn't always smell this way. No, there was a time when eating right and exercise kept this whole area a vital center of activity. But during Mayor Fleming's term, we've seen rot and stagnation paralyze this neighborhood, as well as the colon and the sphincter. Well, I think it's time we get things moving again. I'm Tom Kalanick. As mayor, I would set long-term goals that include ordering salads and eating bran. Mayor Fleming may think that things are fine just the way they are. But I think that if we pull together and put in a little hard work, a new Frank could be right around the corner.
Mr. Kalanick, what's that smell?
Why, that's the smell of change, Billy. That's the smell of change.
Paid for by Kalanick for mayor.
So for that movie, for being, 20 years old and a mainstream movie, I think gets a lot of things right in terms of the parallel about nutrition and about how, not keeping your digestive system clean is a good way for disease to happen and for yourself to become vulnerable to illness. We know that disease begins in the gut. We also know about the brain-gut connection. So going on a juice feast, it'll also kind of get rid of symptoms of depression that you might have. It'll make you a happier, more content person. And that's another reason I did this juice feast, was to really learn that. And I'm reminded of that. Even though I'm in quarantine, I have no feelings of depression, no sadness, feeling quite content. So I'll wrap up my video there. Day 74 of my juice feast, solid food vacation. I'm going for 105 days. Hopefully everything will be out of me by then, but stay tuned for the next video, and thanks for watching.